Ebony hadn't been home in weeks, so when her mother called and said, "Let's have a family dinner," she thought maybe things were finally getting better. She arrived just before sunset, carrying a small gift and a quiet hope. The moment she stepped inside, that hope slipped a little. The house felt heavy, not warm, not welcoming. Everyone smiled, but the smiles didn't reach their eyes. Her aunt looked her up and down and said, "Oh, so you finally remembered us." Someone laughed, but it wasn't funny. Plates clinked too loudly. Chairs scraped the floor. Every small sound felt sharp. Ebony sat down slowly, telling herself not to overthink it. As they ate, the comments started. Some people forget where they come from. Money changes people. Not everyone knows loyalty. No one said her name, but every word landed on her chest. She chewed quietly, her appetite gone. Her mother barely looked at her, busy serving food, acting like everything was normal. Ebony stared at her plate and let her mind drift. She remembered her first paycheck, how she handed most of it to her mother without being asked. She remembered paying rent when things got tight, covering electricity bills, sending money late at night for emergencies. She remembered doing all of it silently, never posting about it, never reminding anyone. She didn't do it for praise. She did it because she thought that's what family meant. She looked around the table again. Cold faces, forced laughter. Not one "thank you." In that moment, Ebony felt it clearly. This dinner wasn't about love. It was about something else. And whatever it was, it didn't feel right at all. The room was already tense, but no one expected it to break the way it did. The plates were still half full when Miriam suddenly dropped her spoon and leaned back in her chair. Her face tightened, like she had been holding something in for a long time and finally decided to let it out. "So," she said loudly, looking straight at Ebony, "how long do you plan to keep acting like a victim in this house?" The table went quiet. Ebony looked up, confused. "I'm sorry, what?" she asked softly. Miriam laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You heard me. You walk in here like you're doing us a favor just by showing up. Always quiet, always watching, acting like you're better than everyone." Ebony felt her chest tighten. "That's not true. I never said." "Ungrateful," Miriam snapped, cutting her off. "That's what you are. Ungrateful and heavy. A burden we've been carrying for years." Someone gasped. Someone else shifted uncomfortably. No one stopped her. "You think we don't notice?" Miriam continued, her voice rising. "Always needing something. Always around when there's money talk. We are tired, Ebony. We're not your bank anymore." The words hit like a slap. Ebony's hands froze on the table. She searched the room, waiting for someone to speak up. Her mother stared at her plate. Sola smirked, clearly enjoying the moment. An aunt nodded slightly, as if Miriam was finally saying what everyone else had been thinking. "And since you think you can't survive without us," Miriam added, standing now, "let me make it clear. Get out." The room went completely silent. No chewing. No breathing. Even the clock on the wall sounded too loud. Everyone waited for Ebony to react, cry, shout, to defend herself. This was the moment they expected her to break. But she didn't. Ebony felt something strange wash over her. Not anger, not fear. Just a deep, heavy calm. Like a door closing quietly inside her. She slowly placed her fork down, wiped her mouth with a napkin, and looked at Miriam. She nodded once. That was it. No tears. No begging. No explanations. She didn't remind them of the rent she paid, the debts she cleared, the nights she sent money without being asked. She didn't list her sacrifices or throw the truth back in their faces. She simply nodded, as if Miriam had just confirmed something Ebony already knew. That calm scared them more than any argument would have. Ebony stood up gently, pushed her chair back, and said in a low, steady voice, "Thank you for dinner." Her mother finally looked up, surprised. Miriam blinked, unsure. Sola's smirk faded just a little. Ebony picked up her bag and walked toward the door. With every step, the room felt smaller behind her. No one followed. No one apologized. No one stopped her. As she reached the door, she paused for half a second, not to turn back, just to breathe. Then she opened it and walked out, leaving behind a house full of people who thought they had just won, without realizing they had pushed out the very person holding everything together. The room was heavy with tension, and Ebony could feel every pair of eyes on her. They expected her to cry. They expected her to shout, maybe even beg. After all, that's what they always thought she would do. But Ebony had learned long ago that giving them what they expected only made them stronger and her smaller. She took a slow breath and looked around the table. Her mother's face was tight, eyes avoiding hers. Miriam's jaw was clenched, knuckles white on the table. Sola leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms, wearing that smug smirk that said, "Finally, I've won." Even the younger cousins were watching, wide-eyed, sensing something unusual in the air. Ebony's bag was by her chair. She picked it up calmly, her movements deliberate, unhurried. No tears. No trembling hands. No raised voice. Just quiet dignity. She slid her phone into the bag, zipped it up and stood, her chair scraping softly against the floor. "Thank you for dinner," she said, her voice steady and soft like a gentle but firm wave. The words hung in the air. Not an apology. Not a plea. Just a simple, polite thank you. Silence followed. Her mother blinked, unprepared. Miriam opened her mouth, but no words came. Sola's smirk didn't falter at first. He laughed lightly, sure she was hesitating, unsure, about to beg or explain. But she didn't. Ebony turned slightly, gathering her composure as she slung the bag over her shoulder. She didn't hurry. She didn't make a scene. Her calmness filled the room, more powerful than any argument. The family had expected chaos. They expected emotion. They expected a breakdown. Instead they got control, her control. Her silence spoke louder than any fight. Said, "I am not yours to control. I am not your guilt to wield. I am my own." Sola's smirk lingered, but a shadow of doubt flickered in his eyes. He was sure she had lost, but something about her calm, her unwavering poise, made him hesitate. The moment that was supposed to mark her defeat didn't feel like victory at all. Not for her. Not for anyone who had thought they held the power. Ebony adjusted the bag on her shoulder, glanced once at her mother, and then toward the door. Her steps were slow, deliberate, and every inch of her movement screamed independence. For the first time that evening she felt lighter, stronger. They had expected her to crumble, but she walked out knowing she had already won in ways they couldn't see, and for once, no one in the room could stop her. That night, Ebony walked out of the house carrying only her phone and a small bag. The door clicked shut behind her, and for a moment she just stood there in the dark, listening to the quiet of the street. No one followed, no one called her back, no one even asked if she was okay. She realized then how invisible she had always been, not really seen, not really valued, just expected. She got into her car, locked the doors, and sank into the driver's seat. The city lights blurred through the windshield, but she didn't move. She just sat there, letting herself breathe, letting the silence settle. Memories came rushing in. The first paycheck she had ever earned, how she proudly handed most of it to her mother, thinking she was helping the family. The nights she stayed up late paying bills no one asked about. The emergencies she quietly covered without a word. The sacrifices no one noticed, no one thanked her for, no one even acknowledged. A wave of anger mixed with sadness rose in her chest, but she didn't let it spill out. She clenched her fists and realized something had shifted inside her. Every insult, every ungrateful look, every cold comment had built something stronger in her, a kind of armor. She would no longer let them take her quietly. She would no longer let anyone use her kindness as a weapon against her. The car felt small but safe. She leaned back, staring at the ceiling, and thought about the years of giving and hiding, of covering mistakes she didn't make. And she promised herself something that night. No more. From now on she would live on her terms. She tried to sleep, but her mind didn't quiet. Instead she ran through every memory, every lesson learned, every betrayal. The night was long, but with every passing hour, Ebony felt herself harden, not in anger but in clarity. She understood now that leaving empty-handed wasn't weakness. It was strength. By the time dawn touched the sky, Ebony's heart felt different, heavier with loss maybe, but stronger with purpose. She didn't have much, just her phone, a small bag and a car for the night, but for the first time in years she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: freedom. And that freedom was hers alone. Ebony sat in her car, the city slowly waking up around her, and for the first time in years, she let herself think clearly. She thought about all the times her family had accused her of being selfish or greedy, all the times they had rolled their eyes when she offered to help. They didn't know. They had never known. She had been the one quietly keeping everything together, the one paying for things they couldn't or wouldn't. She remembered the months she covered their rent when her mother's salary fell short. She remembered sneaking money into envelopes so the electricity wouldn't be cut off. She remembered the countless calls at midnight, reassuring creditors that payment was on the way, just to keep her mother's reputation intact. And Sola, her smug, arrogant brother, the one who acted like he'd earned every luxury he had. She had been funding most of his lifestyle, making sure he could go to the parties, buy the gadgets, wear the clothes that made him look successful. No one thanked her. No one noticed. They assumed the money just appeared. Ebony could see it all clearly now, like a puzzle coming together. Every judgment, every harsh word, every accusation of ingratitude they had thrown at her was not just unfair. It was ignorant. They had treated her like a burden when she had been the foundation. She had been the one keeping the family afloat, and no one had ever realized it. For years she had carried the weight quietly, not for praise, not for recognition, just because it was necessary. But tonight, sitting in the cold early morning air, something inside her shifted. Enough was enough. She wasn't going to be invisible anymore. She wasn't going to be the secret source of everyone else's comfort while being treated like she owed them her life. Ebony made a decision that felt both terrifying and liberating. She was done. No more paying bills they ignored. No more covering mistakes she didn't make. No more silently funding Sola's false success or protecting her mother from embarrassment. She was done being the secret lifeline while being treated like an outsider. The realization brought a strange mix of sadness and relief. She loved her family, she always had, but love didn't mean letting herself be used. It didn't mean letting others take what she had built for granted. From now on, the money she had worked so hard for would stay with her, for her own dreams, her own life. Ebony sat back in the seat, breathing deeply. She felt stronger than she had in years. For the first time, she saw herself not as the family's silent supporter but as her own person, powerful, independent and free. She wasn't asking for anything from anyone anymore. She was no longer their secret. She was her own, and that truth finally felt like victory. Weeks passed, and the house that had once relied on Ebony's quiet support began to feel off. The usual rhythm of life, the comfort of knowing someone was always there to fix problems, started to crumble. At first, they told themselves she'd be back soon, maybe busy, maybe giving them space. But as days turned into a week, and then two, a sinking feeling began to spread. No transfers came. Not a single text asking if they needed help. No calls returning the ones they had made. The bills, once quietly handled by her, started piling up on the table, unopened envelopes stacking like small reminders of a growing chaos. Electricity bills, water bills, school fees. Everything she had always quietly covered now loomed over them. Miriam tried to call, and call again. He texted. She sent messages that started polite, then turned desperate, then angry. Nothing. Ebony didn't respond. The silence was deafening. At first, they laughed nervously, convinced she was playing a game, that she would cave like always. But the laughter faded as reality sank in. She wasn't coming back. She hadn't forgotten. She hadn't slipped. She had made a choice. Sola paced the living room, muttering under his breath. She can't just, she wouldn't. She has to help. But deep down he knew she wouldn't. The things he had taken for granted, the money, the lifestyle, the constant safety net, were gone. And with each passing day, the weight of that truth pressed harder. Even her mother noticed the change. For years, she had leaned on Ebony without seeing her, without understanding her importance. Now, silence screamed louder than words. Every missed transfer, every unanswered call, every bill left unpaid reminded them of a truth they had never acknowledged. Ebony had left, but she had not left powerless. She hadn't abandoned them. She hadn't taken nothing. She had left with something far more valuable than money. She had left with control over her own life. She had left with the freedom to decide when, where, and how she would help, and for the first time they understood the gravity of what they had lost. Terrified them. The quiet, the emptiness, the absence of the one person who had always held everything together. They realized too late that they had assumed she would always be there, silent, patient, giving. But silence had a power they had never respected. And now, for the first time, they felt the fear of what it meant to lose her, to truly see the woman they had taken for granted. Ebony's phone stayed off. Her account remained untouched. And every day that passed without her, the family sat with the reality that she had never left empty-handed. She had left with something far greater, the power to finally be herself, and the quiet strength to make them realize, painfully, that she had always been the backbone of their lives. The phone rang late one afternoon, and Ebony saw her mother's name flashing on the screen. She didn't rush to answer, didn't feel the usual pull to pick up immediately. Weeks of silence had built a calm around her, a quiet shield. Finally, she pressed the green button and held the phone to her ear. "Hello," she said, her voice steady. "Ebony, hi darling," Miriam said, her tone strange. "Too casual, too light. How are you?" We just wanted to check in, see how you're doing." Ebony stayed quiet for a moment, letting the pause stretch. She could hear the small sounds of her mother's house in the background, the clatter of dishes, the distant voice of Sola, maybe someone else wandering around. Everything normal. Everything as if nothing had happened. "Mom," Ebony said slowly, "this isn't a normal check-in." There was a shift in Miriam's voice, a tiny edge creeping in. "What do you mean?" "You know exactly what I mean." Miriam's calm broke, her voice raised, almost shaking. You left your family. You can't just disappear and expect us to keep living like this. You have to come home. You have to fix things." Ebony listened quietly, feeling no panic, no guilt. She let her mother's words wash over her, each one a reminder of how unfairly she had been treated. "I'm not sure you understand, Mom," she said softly, her voice steady and firm. "You told me to get out. Do you remember those words?" Miriam gasped, then sputtered. I didn't mean it like that. I was angry. You have to, Ebony, please. We need you. Sola, your father, everyone. Come home and fix this." Ebony could hear the tears now, the pleading edge in her mother's voice. She could feel the desperation that had been absent when they had dismissed her. She could hear the panic behind the words, the realization dawning that she held the power now. "Mom," she said gently, "I haven't abandoned you. You fired me. Those were your words. I respected them. I left when you told me to. I'm not coming back to fix what you broke." Silence followed. A heavy, stunned silence that carried more weight than any argument. Miriam whimpered, a small, broken sound that made it clear she hadn't expected to hear Ebony speak like this. She had expected tears, begging, confusion, but not calm, not control, not a mirror showing her own harshness back at her. "I'm done being the invisible one, Mom," Ebony continued. "I'm done being the one who fixes everything while being treated like a burden. You know what I can do for myself now. You don't get to undo that." The line went quiet again, Miriam unable to respond. Ebony ended the call calmly, pressing the red button. She leaned back in her chair, breathing in slowly, feeling the power of her own words. She had spoken the truth, firmly and respectfully. She hadn't screamed, hadn't begged for forgiveness. For the first time in a long time, Ebony felt completely in control. And somewhere far away, Miriam realized, painfully, that the daughter she had dismissed was no longer theirs to command. The family had gathered for what everyone thought would be a normal Sunday lunch at Uncle Tun's house. The table was crowded, laughter floating through the air, the smell of fried plantains and jollof rice filling the room. People chatted about work, school, weddings, all the usual small talk. But Ebony wasn't there, and for the first time in years, the absence of her presence felt heavier than the noise. Uncle Tund cleared his throat, and everyone turned to him. "Before we eat, I have something to say," he began, his voice calm but serious. People quieted immediately. It's about money, family money, and who's been keeping things together. Murmurs spread around the table. Sola leaned back, smirking, confident, thinking he knew what was coming. Miriam frowned, trying to appear casual, but her hands gripped the edge of the table. I've been watching, Uncle Tund continued, and I've seen the truth for a long time. Ebony has been the one keeping this family afloat, paying bills, covering debts, sending money when emergencies hit. She did it quietly, without asking for recognition. And Sola, the lifestyle you thought you earned on your own. Most of it came from her hard work. Every single time she handed over money, you lived like a king without ever knowing the foundation was hers. A stunned silence fell over the room. Forks hovered mid-air. Eyes widened. Faces went pale. Miriam's mouth opened, then closed. She tried to speak, but no words came out at first. Sola's smirk faltered. He swallowed hard, his mind racing. Every car, every phone, every new gadget he had flaunted suddenly felt hollow. The life he had thought was his own suddenly belonged, in part, to someone else. Someone who had quietly sacrificed for him. His hands shook slightly as he reached for a glass, trying to regain composure. But the truth was loud, undeniable, and public. Miriam's pride crumbled like a house of cards. The years of lecturing, accusing, and dismissing Ebony flashed in her mind. The harsh words, the cold looks, the accusations of ingratitude, all of it now seemed small, petty, and wrong. She had never stopped to see what her daughter had been doing, the life she had supported silently. Some cousins whispered, some aunts gasped. Even Uncle Tun's wife looked at Miriam with pity and disbelief. The power dynamic had shifted in a single moment. No one spoke for a long while. The air was thick with realization. The room, once comfortable with control and hierarchy, felt suddenly empty. Ebony had been gone, but she had never really left. She had been the invisible force holding everything together. And now the truth was undeniable, public, and humiliating to those who had ignored it. Finally, Uncle Tund leaned back and said softly, "She didn't leave because she wanted to. She left because you told her to get out. And now you see what it cost you." Sola looked down, ashamed. Miriam covered her face with her hands, trying to hide her embarrassment. For the first time, the family understood what they had taken for granted, the strength, the support, and the sacrifice of the one person they thought they controlled. And somewhere, far from the gathering, Ebony smiled quietly to herself, knowing the truth was finally out, and that no one could ever erase the power she had carried all along. The room was tense when Ebony finally returned. Not because she had rushed back in anger or desperation, but because she had chosen the right moment to speak. The family had gathered again, whispers of her absence still hanging in the air, pride bruised and egos trembling. Sola looked ready to scoff. Miriam clutched her napkin like a shield, and her mother tried to smile, nervous and uncertain. Ebony stepped forward slowly, her bag by her side. She didn't raise her voice, didn't rush. Her eyes met each person's, calm but unflinching. "I need to say something," she began, her tone steady, respectful but firm. The room quieted, every eye on her. "I didn't leave this family," she said, letting the words sink in. "You fired me. You told me to get out and I did. I didn't abandon you. I followed your instructions. I respected your decision. That's all I did." Miriam's mouth opened and closed. Sola leaned forward, trying to interrupt, but Ebony held up a hand. "Please let me finish," she said quietly. "For years, I quietly supported this family. I paid bills, covered debts, made sure emergencies didn't break us. I helped Sola, I protected Mom, and I kept this family afloat without anyone noticing. And I did it because I cared, not because I expected thanks." Her voice didn't waver, but it carried the weight of every sacrifice, every hidden effort. "Now," she continued, "I am not going to be the invisible helper anymore. I am not going to tolerate being treated like a burden. I am here, I am strong, and I am finally setting boundaries that cannot be crossed again." She looked directly at Miriam. "I will help when I choose to, and I will not allow anyone to manipulate my kindness. I am my own person. I am not just the person who keeps this family together behind the scenes. I am Ebony, and my life, my money, my time, they belong to me." Her mother's eyes filled with tears, Miriam's lips trembled, and even Sola's confident gaze faltered. The room felt heavy with the truth, with the power that had always been hers but that they had refused to see. "I am not leaving because I want to hurt anyone," Ebony said, her voice softening just a fraction. "I am here to speak my truth. I am here to make it clear that respect is not optional, and boundaries are not negotiable. I will not return to being invisible. I will not let the past repeat itself. I am done being the family's secret lifeline. I am done being treated like a problem. I am here, fully, openly, and on my terms." A long silence followed. The family didn't argue, didn't protest, didn't try to interrupt. They simply realized that for once, Ebony was fully in control, calm, composed, and untouchable. She picked up her bag, adjusted it on her shoulder, and added quietly, "I hope you understand, and I hope from now on we can respect each other." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving the room not in chaos, but in reflection. No tears, no yelling, only the undeniable truth that the daughter they had dismissed had finally claimed her voice, her power, and her life. And this time nothing could take it away. Ebony stepped off the bus in Lagos, her small bag in one hand, her phone in the other, and a quiet smile on her face. The city buzzed around her, honking cars, street vendors calling out, people moving fast in every direction, and for the first time in years she felt like she belonged to herself, not anyone else. She found a small apartment, just enough for her to feel safe and comfortable. The walls were bare at first, but she filled them slowly with things that made her happy. A few photos of friends who had supported her, a small plant by the window, her favorite books stacked neatly on a shelf. Every detail was hers, chosen for her, not for anyone else. Days turned into weeks, and Ebony built a life she had only dreamed of. She got a steady job, met people who respected her, and for the first time in forever, she didn't have to worry about anyone taking advantage of her kindness. She cooked her own meals, paid her own bills, and slept peacefully at night without the weight of unacknowledged sacrifices pressing on her shoulders. Back home, the family watched from a distance. They checked their phones, hoping for a transfer, a message, anything. But Ebony had moved on. Slowly, the truth sank in. The daughter they had dismissed, the one they treated like a burden, had been the very foundation of their lives. Every comfort, every luxury, every stability they had taken for granted had come from her quiet strength. And now she was gone. Ebony didn't look back. She didn't need to. Her heart was light, her mind clear, her future wide open. She walked through Lagos streets with a sense of freedom she had never known, knowing that she had finally claimed her life. The city, with all its noise and chaos, felt like home. For the first time in a long time, Ebony was not defined by anyone else's expectations or judgments. She was peaceful. She was independent. She was free. And nothing, no one could ever take that away.